Welcome to this explainer. Okay, picture this. It's the year 2000, and a tiny, scrappy startup walks into a room with the undisputed king of home entertainment. They offer to sell themselves for what was basically pocket change to the giant, a mere $50 million. And you know what the king did? They literally laughed them out of the room. Today, we're diving into one of the most dramatic corporate clashes ever, Blockbuster versus Netflix. We're going to look at the exact documentary evidence of how the master of the movie rental universe tumbled to a small, ambitious startup.
So you got to ask yourself, how exactly does a multi-billion-dollar empire, a company with literally thousands of stores, lose to a startup they could have just bought outright? Blockbuster wasn't just ambushed out of nowhere. No, they had clear, repeated opportunities to stop Netflix in its tracks. Today, we're peeling back the layers to reveal exactly how changing customer behavior, evolving tech, and honestly, a tragic lack of foresight completely destroyed a giant. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The Undisputed Entertainment King.
At its absolute peak, Blockbuster wasn't just a business, right? It was a Friday night institution. We're talking thousands of physical stores spread all across America. They were raking in billions of dollars in annual revenue. They had the prime real estate, massive walls stocked with VHS tapes and DVDs, and they held an ironclad grip on how we all consumed home entertainment. It was a true, absolutely unchallenged empire.
And because of that massive, sprawling footprint, this crazy illusion of invincibility set in. I mean, pretty much everyone believed Blockbuster would dominate the industry forever. The model was just a massive cash cow. You get in your car, you drive to the store, browse the aisles, pay for the rental, and, here's the kicker, you pay those infamous late fees if you don't bring it back on time. Blockbuster was so deeply baked into American culture that the idea of them just vanishing, it seemed as impossible as the sun not rising.
Section 2. A different kind of future.
Now, this is the exact fault line where the whole industry split wide open. Blockbuster was entirely reliant on their traditional model, physical stores, punishing late fees, and making you, the customer, do all the heavy lifting of actually traveling there. But Netflix, they saw a totally different future. They were relentlessly focused on convenience and technology, completely eliminating the need to ever set foot in a store. They realized super early on that having a physical building wasn't an asset anymore. It was actually a huge barrier.
Now, Netflix didn't just jump straight to the finish line overnight. It happened in steps. Step 1 was building a subscription model where you could rent movies through the mail. Remember those iconic red envelopes? Entirely bypassing your local video store. Then, Step 2 rolled around as internet speeds got faster. They pivoted to streaming content instantly right into your living room. They were systematically erasing literally every point of friction from the customer experience.
Section 3, the fatal miscalculation.
The greatest tragedy of this whole story is honestly pretty simple. Blockbuster totally failed to recognize Netflix as a serious threat. It wasn't just that they ignored a competitor. They looked right at a struggling startup, offering them a $50 million partnership, and they just dismissed them out of hand. Blinded by their own billions in revenue and completely distracted by that vast network of physical stores, Blockbuster executives just couldn't see the massive shift in the wind. And this massive failure? It unfolded in 3 distinct phases. First, consumer behavior fundamentally changed. People just decided they'd way rather stay on their couches than drive out in the rain to rent a movie. Makes sense, right? Second, Netflix adapted with lightning speed to capture that new desire. But the third phase? That's the truly fatal one. Blockbuster just moved way too slowly. They had the capital and the huge brand recognition to mount a fierce defense, but they stubbornly clung to their traditional retail model until the window of opportunity literally slammed shut.
Section 4, the streaming revolution.
So, while Blockbuster was hesitating, Netflix struck the decisive blow. They invested heavily in streaming technology. And once that dam broke, customers switched to online viewing in absolute droves. We're no longer just talking about a cool new way to rent a movie anymore. This was the precise moment the entire entertainment industry was fundamentally transformed. The rules of the game were completely rewritten, leaving the old guard totally exposed. And then, the ultimate, devastating irony finally set in. Blockbuster's massive, expensive network of stores, it suddenly became a major disadvantage. The very real estate that made them a towering giant was now a heavy, expensive anchor dragging them down. The physical leases, the thousands of retail employees, the overhead costs, it all became a crippling liability in this new digital world where content could be delivered instantly through a screen. When you look at the final score of this battle, it is just staggering. Blockbuster faced this rapid death spiral of declining revenue and falling customer traffic, which eventually culminated in an unceremonious bankruptcy, just a total collapse of an empire. Meanwhile, that tiny startup they laughed out of the room, they transformed into a global entertainment giant worth billions of dollars. I mean, the reversal of fortunes here is absolute.
Section 5, the final lesson.
The story of Netflix and Blockbuster still stands as one of the most famous examples of corporate disruption in modern history, and it leaves us with a permanent, really defining warning. Companies that fail to adapt to change often lose to companies that embrace innovation. It is a stark, unavoidable reminder about the fatal dangers of arrogance and the absolute necessity of always looking forward, no matter how wildly successful you might be today. So, I want you to consider this question as we wrap up. What changes are you ignoring in your own industry right now? What small, easily dismissed disruptor is currently rewriting the rules while everyone else rests on their past success? Because as Blockbuster proves so painfully, the very moment you believe you will dominate forever is exactly the moment your empire begins to fall. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep looking ahead, and I'll catch you next time.